We're good?
Yes, ready.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:05. Apologize for the delay. I had a bad link going, so in a double Zoom meeting. Dee Dee, can you just do a brief roll call now that we have everyone here? Make sure we have a quorum.
Okay, we've Kate here, Kathy Grant, Arica, Megan, Chris, Scott. Also with us is Adam Burrows, Amy Cefaletto, and Lloyd Johnson.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. So we can raise to say the Pledge of Allegiance, my favorite thing to do. Get up and stretch. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the
to the
United
United States
States,
of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
one nation.
Okay. Do we have any citizens' comments tonight? Okay. None had. Any guests this evening? No guests. Okay. All right, we'll move forward with the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to take off to discuss, or we have a motion to approve it as presented?
Motion.
Okay. Motion, Kathy and Arca. Okay, all in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Opposed, Scott? Okay. Okay. Motion carries. It's like, oh no.
My mute button's not working.
The small hand. It's hard. All right, so moving along, we'll begin with the administrator reports. Amy Cefaletto, you can start with yours, please, the principal's report.
I had sent out a principal's report with a couple additional items with it. You received 2 different schedules, and one that was for in-person remote learning and one that was for our remote learning that happens on a regular basis, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. We have been going steady. We've been in school just about 5 weeks, so we're going on to our 6th week of school. We've had great results having our kids back. Our families have been wonderful, you know, being able to pick up kids and take them home if they don't feel well, following, you know, the guidelines of having kids stay home or be tested based on what their physician has requested of them. We have had, you know, a healthy staff so far. So we've been really lucky in all of those measures that we've put in. We continue to implement all of the strategies that we put in our reopen plan. So we continue to work on social distancing, which we know is very hard for kids. And we continue to work on hand washing. We continue to work on mask wearing. So all of those things we continue. We know that's important to revisit those items. So that is something that we revisit on a regular basis in multiple classes. We have continued with our grab and go. We were approved for our grab and go service to extend through December 31st. So we will get reimbursement for that, for the meals that we serve through that measure. We have put up some different signage around the building in addition to what we've already had, just to make it a little bit easier for kids and staff. I'm just trying to scan through here and what else I have. So most importantly, what I'll talk about is what happened on this past Wednesday when we had our remote Wednesday. So our remote Wednesday this week was focused on what our closure schedule will be. So it's if I could get paid to schedule people all the time, this is pretty much what I do now all the time, is schedule what will happen if and when. So this past Wednesday, we worked based on what would happen if we actually had to close for 2 to 5 days. If we had to close for 4 weeks, what would that schedule be like? Where would our service providers give services? Where would our specials happen? Where would we fit in math and reading, writing, and what does that look like? So the schedule is comprised of those elements, and we tried to keep in mind what was best for kids, what was best hopefully for parents and families, and then what was best for our staff, being able to put those 3 pieces in. So this past week, we worked on what it will look like if that happens. And so we did practice, and it worked out well. The past 4 weeks or 5 weeks before that, we have been practicing Wednesdays in an effort to get everybody Chromebooks and things like that. But the most important thing we've been practicing are the platforms that we're using. So I keep going back to that. It doesn't matter really what the schedule is. It's can our kids and our parents use the platforms that we are providing? So can they use Seesaw? Are they able to log into their email? Can they use Google Classroom? Are they able to get in their email? And I thought to myself today that if any student in grade 3 through 8 says they don't know how to get into Google Classroom by now, then we're going to have to work on our computer skills a little bit more, because we have worked diligently with them in class and being at home, really getting them used to the fact that if or when we close, we would have to use this program, and this is how we will provide education for them. Seesaw is great, and we're able to use that. We have to just keep in mind that kids K through 2 and really kids K through 4 do still need parental support or guardian support. We try to do activities that they can do independently, but it doesn't always work that way. So even our older kids need support on knowing what they're doing when at times. So it is a real community effort. We've had great success. Kudos to my staff and to the families out there that are making it work on Wednesday. So that was a huge plus for us. One of the things that we have implemented since the last board meeting was we needed to figure out a way that we were going to be addressing our remote learning population. So we left that last meeting in discussion of 2 different options. We discussed a learning platform, and we discussed a live person. So as we explored the learning platform, there were quite a few downfalls to that. One huge one for me is that teacher connection. So basically you plug a child into the computer and there's no live person educating them, and there's no live person giving them feedback and doing those pieces. And so that was a huge component to where for the cost of the program and the cost of enrolling and unenrolling kids, and not having a teacher being able to help them, it actually disengages them more from our school and our community. So that to me was one of I could not foresee putting on a first grader or a kindergartner on a program like that. It just doesn't feel right to do that. And even an 8th grader, and that just isolates kids more in that realm. So what we did was we restructured one of our teaching staff members, who that is one of the schedules that I sent you. So I had sent a letter to parents, and then I sent you a remote schedule. And so we built that off what the governor had put forward in Addendum 12 and the regulations on what we should be providing those kids at home and what their day should look like. That helps parents being able to kind of pinpoint, okay, what should my child be doing, if they're not live with a teacher. And we are providing them live math and live ELA. And then, so that's online, and then they're offline completing additional items in their Google Classrooms or through Seesaw. So we're kind of blending both of those. We've done it so far this week, and we actually got, it was 100% participation. So our 3rd through 8th grade was 100% participation, because we just piloted this, which was great, because that's what we want. We want kids to join meets, and we want them to be instructed with what we know they should be instructed with. And what happened was we had gotten some feedback from parents that they were happy with the fact that their child felt now they were part of a small classroom. So it's hard when you're doing a live stream and you're just watching and your teacher's never interacting with you. That's not good either. That you're just sitting there just watching. So Andrea Kelly has now become our remote instructor, and she's teaching these 3rd through 8th graders in those 2 subject areas right now remotely. We've set up a place for her to do that, and we've seen, just in these past few days, such great success. So we're happy that, I'm happy that we investigated the other option, because we wouldn't have known or been able to say confidently, like, that's just not going to work. That's not how Voluntown operates. That's not how we, want our kids to know. If half the school population was on, remote learning, then I would say, well, then maybe we don't have enough staff to be able to do that. But, with just the 25 students or so that we have, we're able to do it. So we moved into that direction. Like I said, it's worked out well. We've provided them with materials that we, as we are supposed to. So that's kind of, where we went with that. And then we will, and I know Adam and Kate want to talk about, the upcoming weeks and what that'll look like. So Adam, do you want me to talk about that now, or?
You're muted, Adam.
It's old business number 3. So
Okay.
it's on the agenda later on.
Okay. So like I said, it's been going well. Our kids have been great. Our families have been great. We do have an early dismissal tomorrow. Just so everybody knows, car riders are 12:20 to 12:30. We're actually down to getting kids out in 7 minutes. So that's a plus. We time ourselves every day. We try to beat our time. And our bus kids will go first. So that way we can pick up high school kids after that and be able to wipe down bus seats and all those things. So that will be on for tomorrow.
Well, just from a perspective of a parent and feedback that I've heard from the community, the busing situation and the whole car rider situation, you guys have been doing a wonderful job, and it's almost amazing just to see all the individual faces that you don't normally see day to day out there helping the community and shepherding these children along safely. And I want to thank you and the staff and everyone for your coordination on making sure that is, you're taking temperatures, you're doing so many of the nuts and bolts of getting these to their classroom, and it's a work of art, and you're obviously clearly getting more and more efficient. So thank you for all you do for that.
We are getting very efficient. In the beginning, I was like, this is not going to work. But it did. It ended up working out fine. A few fights in between us on what we were going to do, but we're okay. So it's fine.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for staying very, all your communications are really, from what we hear going out to the community, between the school messenger, the texts, the emails, the telephone calls. I think all of that repetition is really keeping people informed. So, and I know the community really appreciates that. So,
and I'm a person who doesn't like to communicate. It's one thing to blog up your inbox with a million communications, but when it's important, I feel that it needs to go out. The reminders need to go out. Now's a time when people forget about early dismissals. Now's a time, this is what we live in now. So I think it's important to, just do that.
Anyone have any questions just generally for Amy? I'm sure we'll speak with her further on the business items that we have for COVID.
Well, I just want to say that I'm glad that it was recognized that, these remote learners, that face-to-face time is so important. And I'm so glad to hear there's 100% participation. That's like not heard of a lot. It really is not. And, certainly in some districts I may be involved with, we're struggling with that. So kudos to you, because it's tough. And I'm really glad to hear that their parents are happy and kids are happy and that they're learning, and you did a good job problem solving with what you have.
That's what we got. This is all we can do. This is what we got.
You figured it out. And I just, again, kudos to you again and your staff.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kate, you're muted.
I was directing it to you. Director of Student Services, Mr. Johnson, do you have an update for us? Thank you.
Good evening. As you know, our PPT and 504 meetings are being held virtually. I'm trying to get in the office about once a week, but most of the meetings I'm chairing from home. And they're scheduled 3 or 4 days a week. So things are moving along. I'm really pleased with the high level of participation of parents and obviously the staff. The technology that we've added to my office has made it even more effective to have a couple of people in the office participating while parents and some staff may be participating remotely, especially when we're having a meeting for a student who's not at VES. And with the a couple of glitch exceptions, things have moved pretty smoothly. On the report, the first item, I'd like to summarize the Bureau of Special Education has revised the paperwork and processes for conducting PPTs to make it a more responsive process from what I understand, and incorporate a lot of feedback from special ed directors and parents. They put out a request for proposals and selected the Public Consulting Group, PCG, to take over this process in a couple of years from Frontline, who has provided IEP Direct and 504 Direct to us for a number of years. The schedule is that this school year, they're working to develop the paperwork and processes to pilot next year in a selected number of districts, with the notion that it'll be rolled out to all of the districts in the state in the 2022-23 school year at no cost to the districts. We hope they're able to keep that commitment over time, because the savings to Voluntown will be approximately $7,000 to $8,000 a year. That's what our license for IEP Direct currently costs us. Programmatically, we have some reevaluations we're working on completing that were postponed this spring. As you may remember, students with an IEP must have their qualifications reviewed every 3 years, and we call the process reevaluation. So we determine what assessments might be necessary, and we're trying to catch up on those before the fall is over, and it's going along pretty well. The rest of the report is just some data regarding meetings and those kinds of things. I think things are going along pretty well. We had our first department meeting a week or so ago and talked about some issues related to scheduling and how we're reaching out to children. I think we're doing a really good job. The feedback we're receiving from parents during our meetings is pretty strong, favorably regarding how we're servicing the students during this time. And I'm just proud of the work my department's doing and how well the general education teachers are collaborating with us and working with us together to do the best job we can for all of our kids. Any questions? We seem to be okay right now.
The other question I would have is on the social emotional front, Lloyd. You know, are you seeing in your, you know, as you're touching base with children, you know, especially in the IEPs and so forth, that they're getting what they need in that regard, and it's you know, that there's a higher need, or you know, what's the temperature kind of there?
Well, fortunately the families are very forthright in letting us know that there are issues. We had a meeting today that occurred only because the parent indicated that there were some concerns. And we had a counselor working at the meeting, as well as the teachers. And because of some of the changes that Amy has made to reach out to the remote learners more, I'll use the phrase more effectively. The parent left the meeting very, very pleased with the response to what the concerns were. So our school counselor, who's also a social worker, is very attuned to the needs of the kids, and parents are very comfortable reaching out to Amy with questions or concerns, and my department also. And I think overall we're very responsive, and Mrs. Groth continues to see groups of kids and classes, keeping that counseling going. So we just, when we find out that a student's having some issues, we reach out to them and work with them on it. You know, there's a lot of talk going on in our business about the need to make sure that we are reaching the social emotional needs of our kids, and we're working on doing that, and getting permission from parents to have our counseling staff or instructional staff talk with any outside counselors that the family may have engaged, and just trying to keep the kids as healthy as possible, socially, emotionally, and medically.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Lloyd? Okay. Oh gosh, I'm muting myself again. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Obviously, these are trying times, and it's going to be probably day to day as you move forward with your evaluations and such. So if it seems it's on the right track, that's all positive news. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3 for the superintendent report.
Yes, I'd like to sing my praises for Amy, Lloyd, the faculty, staff, the parents, and above all, the students for these first several weeks of school, where we've really worked hard, and it's been really a rewarding experience to see the way that everybody has chipped in during very challenging times. You have my calendar of events in the packet, and it's been a pretty full schedule. Our enrollment right now with the enrollment report, and the October 1st report is very special because this is the one that they call it the PSIS that goes into the state, and that's just the number of students in each community, and it's based on the October 1st enrollment. So right now we have 250 students pre-K through 8. And of those 250 students, 52 of them are remote learners. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We've returned $9,715.20 to the town from various grants or monies that have been returned to the school district. And as the public should understand, we have an expenditure-only budget. So if somebody sends us a check, whether it's a rebate for tuition or an order or some other things, if we can't get credit within an order, then the money is returned to the undesignated fund for the town. One year we returned up to $95,000. In the packet, there's also a letter of resignation from the board. That was in Kristen Trahan, and the board will be acting on that in the future, later in the agenda. But what a gracious letter Kristen Trahan wrote to the board, and we thank her for her 5 years of service and attendance on the Board of Education. There's a CABE liaison newsletter to keep the Board of Education updated about the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. There's also some CABE legal workshops, which board members are entitled to sign up for. I've given you an update on the state of Connecticut and sports and issues on that. And then there's also CABE policy highlights with such topics as you know, CABE writes sample policies for us to consider. And these are just things to look at. Face masks, special education, required Title I notifications, travel advisory policies, and live streaming classes and privacy issues. So there's some interesting suggestions for policies. Of course, please remember there are required policies and then policies that the board may consider, and that is a local Board of Education decision. I wanted to mention that I received some State Department of Education information at the beginning of the week, and I thought it would be important to share this with the Board of Education. There were 396 total cases of the virus in school staff and students since school began, and this came out on Monday. 294 students in the state have contracted the virus. 102 staff have contracted the virus. 89 school districts have had at least one case. Approximately 366,000 students in Connecticut, the infection rate is 0.008. Now that was as of Monday. There's no widespread transmission found in schools. And as of this week, 22% of schools are operating fully and in person. 63% are operating in hybrid, and 13% are fully remote. And this will be included in the minutes so that you can have a reference. And as we go through each regular monthly board meeting, if I receive additional numbers like that, I'd like to enter it into our records. There's one final thing, and I'm going to ask the board to approve a motion. The annual Title I and Title II application is due to the state of Connecticut. It was due yesterday. This federal grant is based on the formula that uses economic factors, student enrollment, numbers of free and reduced lunch, and other factors. These funds are used for our SRBI program, which stands for Scientific Research-Based Intervention, tutoring, and a small portion of our summer school expenditures. And basically, I need a motion to show that when I submitted the grant that the board was aware of this. And the motion would be the board authorizes the superintendent of schools to submit the 2021 application for the Title I grant for $40,875 and the Title II grant for $6,290 for a total of $47,165 to the state of Connecticut. So if the board makes a motion, we can document that you authorized me to submit this grant.
Yes.
I'll second.
Motion as read.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And just for your record, I submitted the grant yesterday, and they must have liked it so much that they sent me back and they approved the funds for this grant. So this is something that we can continue with our SRBI and tutoring programs and part of the summer school expenses. And this is a flow-through grant that happens every year, and it's been in existence in the United States since 1965. Thank you. All set, Kate.
Okay, thank you, Adam. That leads us to the committee reports that we haven't kept the committee reports in the
Consent agenda, yes. I usually leave this as a time, if you've read through the consent agenda, if anybody had any questions about committees. But we've been so busy with the COVID-19. In the committee reports, of course, we talked about the 15 reopened committees we've had since July 2nd. And this committee has been meeting weekly. And I wanted to make a comment about that because our committee, we have the board of the first select woman who serves on that. Patrick McCormick, the head of the Uncas Health District, usually can attend part of our meeting and gives us updates. And then we have a wide range of faculty members that coordinate the activity. And you'll be hearing more as we give the reopen update. The other thing is that with the committees, we're required to submit an all-hazard plan annually to the State Department of Homeland Security. And we're in the process. We will have a meeting later this month. The committee will work to update that all-hazard plan. We'll also have an indoor air quality tools for school safety meeting to review our upgrades with the building and how the things we've done to keep the building healthy and safe and to keep all systems working properly. There'll also be a wellness committee in November. And as you know, this is for nutrition and physical activity, and we're required to meet some standards with that. That is a policy. And then toward the end of November, we'll have a curriculum steering committee that will give us an update of the broad range of work that our curriculum committees have been doing. And rather than meeting in person, we have been meeting online. So the board will be hearing more about that in the future. Other than that, if any board members had any questions about the committee report, please let me know. Or if you need to call me in between meetings with any questions, I'd be happy to review the status of those.
I have a comment on the committees. I'd like to recognize the Youth Service Bureau for the work they've been doing. The director of the Youth Service Bureau has been working very hard finding programs virtually and live that are safe for all the students in our town at various ages. And she's been doing really stellar work with that. I wanted to single them out. We're also, Youth Service Bureau is sponsoring a science project again in the school system, which the kids last year, the enthusiasm they showed when they delivered their report on pollution and climate change was great to see.
Sorry, I'm talking muted again. Thank you for that, Chris. That's a good shout out to the YSB because they are doing a wonderful job. Okay, so without any other questions from the board on the committees, move on to old business. First item is the budget preparation process.
Yes, within the budget preparation process, in the order of the packet that we sent out, I gave the board the 6-year summary of every actual expenditure that was made from our budget over the last 6 years. And if you look through various accounts, you will see that, it will tell you how much we actually expended. And even on the first line, if you look, we actually last year spent less on the certified teacher salaries than we did the year before because there were some changes. We had a drop in the public school tuition last year, but there were some increases in other areas. And I just wanted to guide the board through this process because if you go and you look at trends with what's happening, you can see that each different account, such as regular education, last year dropped down a little bit, but special education did increase because of the needs of students. And each area of the budget is documented. If you go to health services, we had a drop in the cost of that due to a changeover with hiring a new nurse. And each area just has some very interesting numbers. And if we looked at actual expenditures, last year, we spent $105,000 less than the previous year. The year before, you can subtract these numbers, it's not in the report. We had an increase of $100,000. The previous year, we had an overall decrease. And 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, our budget went up only $20,000. Now, I gave you this report so you can look at it as we go through the budget development process. And we will refer back to this on a number of occasions just to look at trends and what's happening. The other thing that I wanted to do was to go back and give you a copy of the May 16th Spotlight on Education that we sent home about this year's budget. Because as you know, this was a 0% budget increase from the previous year. And it explained a lot of how we went and how the board was able to successfully develop such a budget. And then I gave you a copy, another copy of this year's budget. And it just gives you an idea of what was approved last year and what we proposed. And then if you look back to 2018-19, you can see that there's a column for approved budget and what the actual budget was. And then also 17-18, there was an approved and actual. So it can show you what we originally approved and then how we made changes. And as you go through, there's some decreases, there's some increases. And one of the things that is of value to me is that try to stick to a budget. And in the last 15 years as superintendent, we've never had to go back to the town for an additional allocation. And the reason is that we're allowed to make transfers from one account to the next. If we have a new student come into high school, or 2 or 3 new students come into high school, then we would have to take money from some other place in the budget to cover that, and we would have to delay things. Now, last year was a year like no others, because in order to get to the 0% budget, we took money from last year and we paid some things for this year's budget. And one of the things that we did is that we made the last payment. And if you were to look at transportation, if you were to go back to the actual expenditures, you would look at transportation and you would see that we made some additional expenditures on that. I'm looking at 2,700 in this proposed budget, and it says account number 442. Well, last year you approved $92,779 for that line. In this year's budget, it went to 0. And that means that when you come out with our budget development proposal for 2021, that's going to show an approved account of $92,779, but the actual expense is going to be twice that much. We did that out of last year's budget so that there would not be a property tax mill increase, and we would not have bus payments, and hopefully for the next 5 years. And that's just a cost-saving strategies that the board has the power to do as they approve transfers. And eventually, when we go to the town, they will receive our budget proposal for 21, 22, and we will go back over lines, and we will drop one of the years off, 2016, 17, and we will go back, 1, 2, 3, we'll go back 4 years so that the town can see what we've expended. If there's any questions about this, please feel free to, ask them. There's just some interesting figures in there. And as we go through the budget process, I always like the board to come up with questions, because if you're coming up with questions as we're developing the budget, then when we're talking to the community, we would already try to analyze any questions and develop appropriate answers. So there's no motion related to any of this. It's just the budget development, and there is a timeline in there for the budget development process. And the topic for this meeting was actual expenditures over the past 6 years.
I always find it helpful to see it from a year over year perspective. This is one of my favorite reports to look at, generally speaking, so I can kind of gauge each year.
I haven't been to many school districts where they look at 8 years of budgeting as they're developing their budget for the next school year. And I like this format because it talks about real dollars in different accounts. And we don't have a fancy budget book, but we have the spreadsheets in which we can monitor and look at what's happening. And please remember, over the last 4 years, if you average up all of the approved budget increases, it averages out to about minus $3,000 a year for the last 4 years. And we had no property tax increase for this year.
Anyone have any specific questions for Adam, or should we just chew on this for a while and come back?
Thank you for all that, Adam.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So with that, we can move on to agenda item of old business number 2, which is the COVID-19 update, the relief grant.
Yes, as you know, we were awarded $260,474. At the last board meeting, I had the board make motions regarding the air handlers and upgrades for the upgrades for those, installation and completion of air conditioning in the school, and also a motion to purchase a new van based on reimbursement through COVID release funds. Just 2 days ago, I received the confirmation that the ventilation and the AC are okay, and the van is not eligible for reimbursement, but that doesn't mean I won't keep trying, so that we have to move those funds into other areas. Now, as I told you before, this money is something that we would have to take from our school budget and spend the money. And then the state will at some point reimburse the town, because it's not a direct grant. And they mentioned in the grant that there's another grant that we had applied for and received. It was for $32,747, and it was called the ESSER grant. And the people who run the relief grant want us to expend all of the ESSER funds, before we go into the relief funds. Well, basically, we've done that. We've upgraded the Wi-Fi in the junior high school, but with the ESSER grant, we write a purchase order and we just withdraw that money directly from an account that's in Voluntown. So it doesn't have to be an expenditure and then it's reimbursed to the town. But with this relief grant, and I will tell you right now, the money has to, the deadline is December 31st. So we have to have all of our lists and expenditures ready to go at that point. But in the reopening committee, as I talked to the first select woman, we do not have the money in our no increase budget, in our 0% increase budget, to make up the difference and to purchase these things for these additional expenses for the COVID-19, challenges. And so at some point in time before the end of December, we would need to look and perhaps ask the town for an additional allocation. Hopefully that the town may approve that. I do not have the number on that, but as I said before, we will make every effort to utilize existing funds and then see what would be an excellent reimbursement from the state. Now, the other thing is the 260,000 were all for supplies and PPE equipment, some parts of transportation. And when I made an original request, all of the personnel that I asked for was taken out by the response for the state. And I wrote a letter directly to the Commissioner of Education requesting that 95,000 of the 260 be available to use for personnel. And I can tell you right now, and we'll be talking about this a little later, Amy mentioned she needs a remote learner teacher. Well, this money would be appropriate for that remote learner teacher. And then we hired an extra custodian because we needed to complete extra cleaning during this time of COVID. That money could be used for the, for the custodian. So I'm looking to, utilize some of those funds for these positions that we've basically, added, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And the other thing is, I really do think that as we get into the reopening recommendations, there may be some things that the board may have to authorize because we really think that we've come up with a plan. That's all I had with regards to the COVID relief grant. This grant it has been it's like no other grant that we've ever worked with, and I've never had to write a letter directly to the commissioner making a special request. But I'm in hopes that they agree with the request for local school districts and offer us just a little bit more flexibility with what's happening. But I'll tell you, the thing that happened with that van is we're going to need one eventually, and it may have to go into the town's capital improvement plan either next year or the following year. So this was an opportunity to save taxpayer funds. I just wish that there could have been a little bit more flexibility with the use of the funds.
Kevin Limbo, this comptroller, a couple of days ago said that Connecticut's looking at a $2.1 billion deficit because of COVID-related issues. Do you think that would affect our grants? Would they just say, no grants for you, we don't have the money? Is that a possibility?
With the difference between the PPE, Chris, and the personnel, I really do think that the governor wanted to make sure that school districts had enough money for personal protection equipment. And the van was to be used for social distancing because we were going to trade in a much older 7-passenger van for a 10-passenger van, which does make a difference as you're traveling. And, but I do think that there's going to be some real financial challenges, within the future. And I'm watching very carefully what happens with some of the state funding, because at the same time, people are talking about there was a surplus from last year's funds. And it was just an interesting time. So I think we're going to have some huge swings. And during that time, I really do think, we're faced with an $89,000 cut in our ECS grant for next year. And that's something that we're going to have to make up with. And through the budgeting process, Amy Lloyd and I have been talking about some approaches that we want to use to try to get through that time. So right off the bat, we have that bill. And then you're right, Chris, the state has some challenges. They may wind up cutting our ECS grant. But there's another swing to this. The state did not cut the overall ECS grant. They increased the grant. And then most of Eastern Connecticut received cuts. And the smaller rural communities received cuts. And the cities, rightly so, they need the money. They receive some significant increases. And it's just really interesting because, to give you a variable, the ESSER grant with the $32,747 that I said we received, the city of Hartford received almost $11 million. And of course, they rightly deserve that. But I would just like to see a little bit of adjustment in the way that they determine and they distribute the grants. And it's just something that I've written to state legislators about and other people about. But we get affected by that because last year we've received up to $2,500,000 a year, and now it's dwindling by almost $90,000 a year, and it will continue to dwindle until 2025 by that $89,000, and then in 2025 they have us slated to receive a double decrease. So we're going to be looking at some significant changes in funding.
All right, well, well, thank you for that update, Adam, on the state of at least some of the grants. Thank you, appreciate you for all the ways that you're reaching out and trying to get us the funding that perhaps can be used creatively or not, or however we can to support our community and getting through the hardships of the COVID-19. Especially even reaching out to the commissioner. That's much appreciated directly. It's going to be I think it's going to be an uphill battle from here on out, and we're doing our best. So should we move along to the reopening update, item number 3?
Yes.
Okay.
We had a choice to make because Amy and the faculty and staff and Lloyd have been working diligently for doing some real reorganization to effectively meet both in school and remote learners. And there's a couple of positions that, we've implemented that it's utilizing existing staff. And we also took an SRBI teacher that we were using the Title I's to pay for to do our SRBI program, which is a tutoring program. And I will tell you this, that there's tier 1, 2, and 3 services that are offered for SRBI. And tier 3 is the one that requires direct instruction for students in English language arts and mathematics. And it's been for the last 2 years, and I have other school superintendents that just drop their mouths when I say, we have no tier 3 identified math students. And they just thought that that was really incredible because we do such a fine job. The other thing is, for the last 2 years, well, not last year, but the previous 2 years, because they didn't do the high stakes SBAC test, we came in number one for those 2 years in a row out of the 16 DIRGs comparison, the 16 school district DIRG, we were number one in both those areas. So that there's some achievements that we're making. And this is a long segue into the adjustments that we're making. But we need the board to, approve some of the readjustments with staffing that we've did utilizing existing budget. Now, we had a teacher who was going to take SRBI, and that teacher is now having some 3rd through 8th grade responsibilities with remote learning that Amy will talk about. But we need to hire a tutor that will be paid for by this outside grant. And please remember, we had an unanticipated resignation at the beginning of this year, retirement. And when a teacher retires at the top of the pay scale, then we can work with replacing it with a teacher at the lower end of the scale. So we do have some money that we can look at to reinstate paying a teacher for the remote learning. But I did mention that there's a possibility that we can use those relief funds to reimburse what we expended. So we have some things that we're doing that are very creative, but very, very supportive of students and parents. And with that, I think Amy has some recommendations that we'd like to go ahead with. So Amy, do you want to, you started talking about this a little bit earlier, but this is the agenda item where we move into action and tell the board where we are. And I think you should start off with the return to school first, so they could make a formal motion on that.
Okay, so we've been talking at our last board meeting, we discussed, our purpose was to discuss what's going to happen after Remote Wednesday goes away. And in the past 2 weeks, in evaluating where our staff is and where our students are, my recommendation at this point, based on the numbers in the transmission in schools, which Adam had noted before, which was 0.008%, the low number within our community. So we know that, for example, in Norwich, a lot of it is community spread and not through schools. And us being in Voluntown, we've taken a lot of measures and been able to work cooperatively with our families and our kids in school and keeping them safe. Does that mean that COVID is never going to happen in school? It does not. So, I don't want people to think that any of us think that we're immune to that happening, because it can and it might, and we'll just close and reopen. And so that's kind of, how we will approach it. But with that being said, we have talked and discussed, we worked with our reopen committee yesterday. And I did voice that I feel next Wednesday, we should not return for an early dismissal, but we should just return full in person on Wednesday. Being that one of the unique things that we're doing, because we are so small, like some of our sister schools, is that we are, when they talk about cohorts, we are AA. There's no B. So all our kids are all in 4 days a week. And so for us to add on an early dismissal, so tomorrow's early dismissal will be interesting. We've never done an early dismissal after only coming to school for 3 hours. We've never had to do grab and go lunch. We've never had to. So tomorrow will be a test run of what it's going to be like getting kids in and then basically turning around and having them go home. The thought is, it's nice out now. The weather is good. Our transmission has been low. We feel that we've taken all the right steps. Our remote learning is in place with Mrs. Kelly. Our remote learning for our younger students is in place with Mrs. Wyland. Our kids have had 5 Wednesdays at home with their families to practice those platforms and continue to practice. Returning on the Wednesday, if we return for 3 hours, my feeling is, well, why don't we just keep our kids for the remainder of the day? Whether it's just 3 hours or the whole day, it's not, it's not going to make a difference COVID wise. It doesn't matter. So if we're going to come back, it takes a lot of the pressure off of cramming in all these subjects and all this time for these kids. We're able to provide lunch. We're able to provide time outside, and having them just return. With that being said, I do want to just keep the door always open, that we know we're going to go into the darks of December and January. And being inside all day with minimal up and down, minimal interaction, we might need to revisit some early dismissals on behalf of our kids' mental health and being able, but for right now, being able to get them outside multiple times with other kids, and it's light out and it's nice weather. I think that we can full return on Wednesday. I hope that we don't ever have a case in Voluntown, but it definitely could happen. I think that just being in on the Wednesday gives us another day to be able to get a day of education in face-to-face. So with that being said, and as Adam talked about, Adam, do you want to say anything more about that? We did, I will say before Adam turns on his microphone, I will say that we did consult with Patrick McCormick from the Department of Health. And we did talk about some different factors, what involves a full reopen, what involves a hybrid reopen, et cetera. And, when we talked about with him about those pieces, it's kind of in line with what we're doing anyways. So, he was supportive if we felt we could reopen. He was supportive if we felt that's what we could do at this time.
Yes, and we're not working at, excuse me, isolation, because we are, communicating with Uncas Health District, with the leaders in the community, and also participating in area meetings. As I mentioned, 22% of the school districts in the state are back full. So if we could, I think it would be helpful if there could be a board motion to follow through. We could go through all of the other details of the plan, but does the board approve a full day on Wednesday effective October 14th?
I'll make that motion. If you all feel, Amy, Lloyd and Adam feel comfortable with it, I think it's fantastic, actually. And if you guys feel comfortable with it, wholeheartedly, we'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I just want to just give some color there. Being on the reopen committee, we did ask several questions about this. It was, we've iterated this in our board meetings, in our reopening committees about, the potential for half days, not rushing in. Obviously we've talked at length with this board and appreciate everyone's comments, personally and professionally, of what that would look like. And I have give a lot of credit to Amy and the staff for putting all these different hats on to figure out what that would look like if we are in remote world. Unfortunately, if it does happen, it will happen quickly, and we need to be prepared for that. But after reviewing that at length, it seems that we are quite prepared for that. And it's taken a lot of work, but I agree. I think it's let's give the kids the opportunity to learn while we still have the time, and hopefully in person and the outside time to have mask breaks and so forth, that they're not living in a little, inside all the time with a mask on. So,
and I was going to add to that, that Norwich NFA had to shut down for, I think it's 2 weeks. There's some contact tracing that's going on, but this is with the, condition that if something happens, I may have to, as superintendent, make a decision based on the Uncas Health District and some of the things that are happening. And of course, the governor at any time could say, we're moving into another, school closure. But I think based on the work that Amy and Lloyd and the faculty staff have done and the students, they're prepared to, if we have to go remote, we'll go remote. If we have to make adjustments, we'll make that as quickly as possible. But it'll be great to get the children back into school full time, and maybe instead of 22% of the school districts, it might be 22.5% of the school districts. So.
I think it's important to note too that we recognize, how, Wednesdays are stressful, and they're stressful for families. You're trying to figure out who's helping your child on the computer. Can your grandparents do it? Can your sibling help you? These are all hard things that we had to practice. And it's hard for teachers too. How can they take this worksheet and get it on this computer and do all these things? And that is very difficult. And, we've done it, we've practiced. The kids know. If you're, like I said before, if your kid tells you they don't know, call me, because they know how to get on and they know how to manipulate these things. So it's important that the face-to-face is important in being able to do that. So if we can get that day in, I think it's worth, I think the benefit outweighs the risk right now for that.
I agree with that.
Okay. So a motion to approve to go all in school 5 days a week, 5 full days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think Chris, you made the motion?
I second it.
Okay. Start second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Now, Amy, we need to get into some of the staffing. You don't have to mention names, but positions. And I kind of have an interesting motion for the board to consider on this. So want to talk about how you're reorganizing?
So we reorganized our SRBI teacher, who's a full-time teacher in our district, to supplement, organize, and coordinate. It is a coordinated effort. The remote learning piece for 3rd through 5th grade. So it's a little convoluted. So when you think of remote learning, we have to think there's remote kids and there's in-person kids. So in-person kids who are at home sick, or at home because they're having COVID testing, at home for whatever reason, they don't participate in our remote learning program that's put on by this teacher. This teacher is doing their own teaching and lesson planning for these particular students. It's parallel to what the teacher's doing, but they're two different essentially groups here. So our remote teacher has for 3 through 8 has the 25 or so kids. She does have a full schedule. And then our in-person kids, when they're out, we try to 6 through 8, we have live math meets, because that's what our remote kids join. So I could talk all day about what it looks like. So just know that it's very meshed. It's very confusing. And what ends up happening is she has a full schedule. We have to supplement SRBI services for students. So teachers can do tier 2 SRBI in their classrooms. And so we work in providing direct instruction for kids at the next level in tier 2 who need a little bit more phonics, need a little bit more comprehension. The tier 3 level and the advanced kind of tier 2 level, you need an additional staff member. It's required to pull those kids out and give them almost intensified service. So this is one step before we go through the special ed identification process. So you try to remediate students between the tier 2 and tier 3 process, hopefully, so that way then we've caught them up in the gaps maybe that they have. And then we don't need to further on with special education support. If they need special ed support because these processes haven't worked, that's when we go to the PPT process. So what we need is an SRBI person now at this point, because we've restructured that one full-time teacher having a part-time SRBI teacher to fill those gaps in of those tier 2 and tier 3 students. So that's the piece that we're missing now at this point. And it is a 4-day-a-week position, so it is considered less than an FTE. I could do it myself, but it's a lot of work. I've already got a lot of work, so I can't help remediate them right now. But it's, for those kids, helping them close those gaps before going to a PPT and testing. So that's really important. And the younger they are, we know studies say that it's the most important time to catch them up. And one of the reasons why we need to return face-to-face, because that's the time that kids are learning when they're young. So that's the restructuring that's happening now. And I know Adam had talked before about just being able to, move those funds around, and hopefully that kind of covers that. Adam, I did talk a little bit about the SRBI process and having that tutor 4 days a week.
Yes. And that would be.
Is the tutor a certified position, or is it's a certified teacher that does that?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're lesson planning and they're doing they need to have a knowledge base of how to teach phonics, how to teach comprehension skills, and do those pieces. So yes.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is looking at moving existing staff to help with the remote learning process. And then we would advertise. We thought that we had some, we thought that we had somebody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
We thought that we had somebody who could, a retired teacher who could come back and who could work part-time under her certification and an hourly wage, but that did not work out. So we're moving back to where we were last year with a SRBI tutor. And this, as I said, would be paid for by the Title I funds. So it would be helpful if, there was a motion to, allow some flexibility to make adjustments for, existing staff for remote learning. And I also, we talked about this before, we've had a very highly successful remote learning portion for its pre-K through second grade. So we've had 2 teachers on staff who have been reassigned during this time of COVID. And one with the preschool is taking care of all of the preschoolers because there's been some adjustments. And then also working with the K1 and 2 students in remote learning. And this is turning out to be successful. So rather than make a motion to, this person and that person, it would just be a motion to allow for flexibility with existing staff to address remote learning issues.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then the SRBI teaching position is established, but that would be a motion to, adjust the SRBI program to be taught by a tutor, a certified tutor. So that's the second motion.
Motion.
Give a second for the tutor. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, personnel. I was running off to the side because Dee Dee, we're in the central office. She lost her connection. And I was trying to get on another computer to see if she could use that. But we'll see what happens when she comes back. I think she can hear us, but can't see us. It's a voice in the wilderness.
You have
Uh,
to turn-
Okay, personnel. Okay, as you know, in your packet, there's a letter from Holly Santiago, our nurse, and she has resigned. So there's needs to be a motion to accept the resignation of Holly Santiago.
Megan and Arca. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. It's unfortunate. Sorry, am I muted? I just know it's unfortunate for everyone. Obviously, Holly had circumstances. She was a great nurse and she's done so much for us for this past year. And my heart goes out to, you know, anyone in this circumstance where they just, you know, it's hard to do their job because of the pandemic and it's just stinks. So
we've been advertising wherever we could. You know, we have an interview set up for tomorrow. Amy's going to take care of that with a possible candidate for a school nurse.
it's clearly a critical role. We have to get that nurse in.
If we don't have a school nurse, we're closing.
Mhm.
And fortunately, Mary Rollins was in today and she retired after like 33 years, but she came in with her typical smile and being very helpful. So we appreciate that. Plus we have another substitute who has been wonderful and helping. So we have people to get us through temporarily and they're excellent. So lots of experience. With the head cook, I'm not sure. We hired a head cook. The head cook's name is Corin Proulx. CORRINE PROULX, and that would be a motion to verify hiring the new head cook.
So moved.
Motion, second.
Kate, you're muted.
Thank you. All in favor to hire the new head cook, Corinne Prue?
Okay, we got that.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I think that we covered everything at this point. So that just gets into the, you know, to the next sheet, and that's in your packet. It's just the faculty staff list. And that is our faculty as of right now. And we do have some temporary bus monitors. And that's another one of those personnel issues in that COVID relief fund. We've had to have the monitors on the bus to help with social distancing and helping students. There's mask wearing and there's other things, but we've temporarily put people in that position. And we'll have to see what happens with the virus and some of the other things, but this is an issue that we'll address probably at the next meeting.
Okay, so we can move along to policies, right, Adam?
Which one? Yeah, policies, yes.
Okay, so I know we've had a few chances to take a look at several of these. Just open discussion for item number 6, which is the Title 9, number 4,000 spot 1. Open for discussion.
There's just a temporary, there's a editing thing. Dee Dee picked this up the other day, and so we sent something in to CABE, and Voluntown got the Eagle Eye Award for policies from CABE because there's a thing with one of the pages here. There's a discrepancy between what's in the regulation and what's in the policy.
Policy, yeah.
And I think I just have to find it here. Unfortunately, I didn't circle it before on the policy, but I do have it in an email in another place. But let's do it this way, rather than searching for that. It will match when the board approves it, and we'll make the edit if the board goes ahead and approves this policy. It's just taking out, it's just adding will not in one of the sections.
Yeah, it was minor. I saw it.
Motion.
Kathy made a motion to approve it as presented.
Yeah. Yeah. However he presented it.
I know this one has a particular amount of weight on it to get implemented quickly, countrywide. So I think we don't have a lot of wiggle room to adjust it, from my understanding.
That's correct.
Mhm. Okay, motion to approve it as presented from Kathy. Is there a second? Erica, okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.
Okay, so moving on to number 7, policy and forms. This is on admission and placement. This is also a third reading. It's form number 5111. Residency. I didn't see any edits or issues myself, but open for any other thoughts.
Just for board members' information, the changes, the change in the wording is all of the italics.
Italics, right.
Yes.
It addresses homelessness, I think.
This is all based on like Connecticut state law, right?
You
In
need a
terms of
motion?
Yes, yes. If you look at the, Megan, if you look at the last page of the policy, you'll see that there's some italics with some, there's just the legal references. And these policies just go ahead and, work to meet those legal changes. And the CABE Policy Services develops their recommendations, and we think this is the third reading on this, and two board meetings ago, we gave the policy with the lines drawn out of the old language, and then this is the way the new language would read, and then we would take out the italics when we send it into CABE, and they would post it on their website as one of our policies.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I would just assume the state of Connecticut establishes the guidelines for enrolling in a public school. It's not really a lot of flexibility with the boards, I would think. Is that correct?
Well,
not that I would be looking to change it. I'm just genuinely curious about.
Well, there are required policies, Megan, and then there are discretionary policies. And the board has a lot of, input into, how the policy, should go. But this, if you look at some of the language that they've changed, they referenced ESL or bilingual programs. Or a whole language survey to help. We do not have any bilingual students, but Norwich has 37 different languages in their school district. So if we did receive English as a second language student, we would be required to follow, the guidelines of this policy. But I will tell you this, that children are very successful, especially if they're younger, coming into school districts, especially interacting with their peers. They pick up the language pretty quickly. And I've seen some wonderful successes with that. But again, we have our SRBI tutor who would probably be working with such a student to, help with some individual work and other types of things. So we have a range of capacities in our school district to meet such needs.
We have changed policies in the past, wording, even the gist of them, but some of them, and I believe this is one of them because this one's been all over the news actually for a couple of years now, that I don't think we can adjust this one at all.
Yeah, no, I was just more like, for example, one of the things in here is like resident children under the age of 21 are allowed to enroll. Is that set by the state or is that set by the town? And again, I'm not looking to change it. I want to know for the process. Like,
Megan, look at the top. Is it, what page is it on? A, B, or C?
it says policy 5111A.
Okay, and where?
And that's an example that I think it's the first one, the first italic point where it just says all resident children under the age of 21 who have not obtained a high school diploma are entitled to attend a district school. Is that a state, is that set by the state of Connecticut?
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
and the other thing is, Lloyd talked about this at the last meeting. They just changed the ruling for special ed children, and it's until age 22. So, we're receiving some mandates from the state and legal rulings that require us to offer services.
Yeah,
I just wanted to know if it's like, obviously harassment, right? We've talked about is like, it's basically just we're reiterating what the state law already says versus us as a board are setting forth the language. I was just curious as to where this stuff falls.
No, it's an excellent question, and I think that we're going to be faced with some additional things, but it is required.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Most of these seem to be policies that the state already has and funds on their own and just sends over to the towns now and wants the local taxpayers to pay for it. That seems to be what a lot of the non-funded mandates.
This is state legislators making a decision that the local taxpayers have to pay for. Yes, Chris.
You are right.
now does the age of attendance form that we're doing, it's an upcoming policy.
Did we vote on the last one?
We haven't, we will. I'm just like, we're gonna vote on this one and then there's a different one that's age of attendance and it's a different age. Sure, I'll pass this one and then we'll discuss that one. Okay, so sticking to this particular 5111, do we have a motion to approve it
Motion.
written? Hello. Do we have a motion? Am I on mute? No. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this one or do we need more time with the age of admittance? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a second? Do we have a second to approve 5111? Anyone? Admission placement? Kathy did. Okay, Kathy, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor to approve?
We'll be here all night if somebody doesn't second.
I'm
it.
sorry, it's hard to hear in this circumstance. It's so much easier to approve this stuff in person. Okay.
Nobody
Any
seconded.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Who seconded it?
Kathy?
She's the one that made the motion.
No, Arica did.
Oh,
I know, I was looking for the second. Okay,
Oh, I think the first.
all right, this is moving on to item number 8, which is policy 5112, age of attendance, which goes back to what we were discussing with Dr. Johnson. So is there anything specific about this, Adam, or around?
The first page, second paragraph from the bottom, the district shall immediately enroll a homeless student and allow such student to attend school, even if the student is unable to produce records normally required for enrollment. And that's just part of legislation. And then it has some requirements for determining residency. We will not require documentation of citizenship or immigration status of a child, but the board believes document is not relevant to the establishing resident. The establishment of residency, the board will accept such documentation as but not limited to a lease agreement, mortgage agreement, tax record, rent receipt, homeowner's insurance, current utility bill, current proof of government benefits, Connecticut driver's license, automobile registration, insurance, and affidavit of residency properly executed shall be acceptable. So it's just listing. I think it strengthens some of the things that you can use to determine residency and residing in the district. And of course, it gives a policy statement for that the person should fill out, and it references all of the legal references. So those were the main changes within that policy.
I have a question about the illegal
status.
aliens. What they're doing basically is stealing from all the taxpayers when they enroll kids into our schools. That's robbing from every single one of us. And I don't want to include them at all. I think they're criminals, and I don't want to reward them for their criminal activity.
But it's the law. This isn't a place to argue about it. We'll be here at 10 o'clock at night.
We don't have to
Well,
hold
then we'll be here till 10 o'clock at
or
night.
tomorrow, whatever it may be, but I'm
We have a
not,
legal obligation to educate every child regardless.
if they're illegal, they don't deserve our taxpayer money.
They're stealing our taxpayers.
Legal obligation to
Then they can
educate
come to
them.
school. Get their status straight, and then they can come to school. That's the way it is. Illegal is illegal. No, there's no
You have
way of making that change.
law.
It's not a law. We can say no. It's our school. It's our town. It's our money. We don't have to say yes.
Is this saying that it's like they're illegal or not illegal in this policy?
It's saying they don't have to provide citizenship proof.
Is it a requirement?
I'm sorry, my mom immigrated here in 1972 from Honduras at the worst time for Honduras.
No.
And she did it legally. You can't come here legally, you're not entitled to anything.
Oh, nice.
Can't get a CT driver's license, government benefits. I mean,
Is it
these things listed
is this-
Well, they
doesn't
can
seem
get a
to be.
license. They can absolutely get a license now.
Adam or not?
I didn't hear that.
Seems to me like we'd be rewarding criminal activity, and again, stealing from all the taxpayers who legally work very hard.
See if it's required. And tell us that.
I'm sorry, I'm not putting my tax dollars to this, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to.
Kathy, I can't hear you though.
Yeah, Kathy, you keep breaking up. Your internet is like it's all gobbled.
Well, the other meeting is playing over this one. So
Well,
people are hearing two meetings, by the way.
Oh, I thought that was Kathy.
Check with Fred. I
No,
was gonna say,
the thing is that you're
I
not
was gonna
required.
say, can you check with Dorsey? What's that?
Kathy, your audio is really not coming in.
Sorry. There's not much I can do about it.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're leaning forward, yes.
Required, we don't have to put it in. If it's required, we don't really have a choice. If it's the law, maybe you can check with Fred, or if you know
Yeah,
whether it's
I'll check with Kay, but you should not request documentation of citizenship or immigration status of a child. So
Yeah.
in other words, you have all sorts of things that you can check. That's just one of the things that it says you don't.
electric bill and stuff.
I would pass this, let's get to Fred with it and see what's,
Yeah, I would check
It's in the
if
law.
we don't need it. If we have to have it, then you guys, it's got to be in the book, or you got to change the law in Hartford. It's not a choice. Check with Fred.
I think this language was in the last policy we just approved also, wasn't it?
Huh?
I think the same language was in the last policy that we looked through, I believe, too. I could be wrong, but maybe.
Whether we like this or not, whatever your personal feeling is, I know from a perspective of where I work, we have similar different types of issues, and for children, we have a legal obligation to educate them.
By law, regardless.
Yes, we do.
of if-
Regardless of personal,
I'd
that's
like
what
to
it
find
is.
out what the law actually is before we vote on it.
That
Well,
is the law. We're
that's what we'll say.
obligated.
Well, not just because you say it, Kathy, is the law.
Meeting.
I'd like to see the law.
We can
Well,
just
you
put it
can
on
get
the agenda for the next meeting, that's all.
Get it for Fred.
Yeah.
Get Fred and pay him to find out. So we can.
That's what he
That
gets.
would be a lot cheaper than having an education stolen from taxpayers to
Exactly.
pay a
What's the
lawyer
cost
a
to
few hundred
educate every
bucks.
student?
Let's steal thousands and
Then we're
thousands
talking
of dollars
special
from taxpayers and think that's fine.
Well, the circumstances of parents are not placed on the child. So we don't take away from the child based on other
No,
decisions.
that's
So
your opinion.
that's where that law comes from.
That's your opinion.
Let's just have Fred check
Oh,
it out.
It's the
Let's
law.
have Fred check it out and tell us if we're required
It's
to.
the law.
I'm pretty sure it's the
Well,
law.
again, just because you say it doesn't mean it's facts.
Well, Fred can check it out.
I think we're gonna check it out, Scott. I think it's clearly, we didn't talk about this. We haven't had a lot of time to discuss it. We've had a lot of long
Yeah, I
meetings,
would-
so,
We'll
you know,
visit.
I think that's fair. Do we need to look at the other item that was about admission?
Well, I think we got to get to the bottom of this first before we can look at the omission.
We already approved admission.
We've had.
The admission,
we've
the
had
admission
over
has
2
the,
months with the
has the
admission.
same length. The
And
admission has the
nobody
same
read
length,
it up
so I
till
think
right.
we just need to clarify it for both. If we're gonna clarify it for one, we should clarify it for both,
True.
with Fred.
We'll return, we'll have a statement at the next board meeting.
Do we need to rescind our last vote? Okay.
I'll make the motion if that's what needs to happen.
I'll second that.
Okay, are we all in favor to review rescind the last vote to approve what is it? 5111 admission placement for further review of the state law applicable?
Yes.
Yes.
Weiler
okay, all in
versus
favor.
Doe is what I would look up for state legislation, by the way.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so that's gonna go to fourth reading, both 5111 and 5112. Number 9, policy 6172, district learning plan. Distance, it should be distance learning plan, sorry. It's on the agenda as district.
Is this a completely new policy based on the COVID stuff, or do we have something like this in place already?
Brand new.
Right now.
Brand new from the state.
It leaves a lot up to, I mean, Amy, I'd like to hear your opinion if you have one at all in terms of, I don't know if you've looked at it at all, but it's, you know, I feel like it's trying to give loose samples is hard and fact policy. We don't have one like this. Obviously, it's kind of extremely applicable presently. It's whether we as a board feel like we need a policy statement about it. Or move to another review if everyone wants to look at it again.
Is this is this from CABE? This is the
This is
CABE policy
Yes, it is.
that,
But you know,
Not a required policy is what, you know, the point of it is. It's,
yeah.
Amy,
My only suggestion would be that I really would need to read through where it says key components of the distance learning program, because I don't want it to have something in there that we wouldn't consider doing. If you were looking to approve this tonight. So I would just rather, if you let me read it over, just to make sure like there's something in there that we don't provide, and it's in there because it is a generic policy.
Connecticut school law,
there's another
part
approach.
of Connecticut school law,
No, it's,
sixth edition, and it was passed, it says, regardless, schools are generally responsible, anyone in their district, regardless of legal or illegal immigration status in Connecticut. But we can get Fred to read it out to us.
We've already moved this, Kathy.
But you Google it, they'll tell you.
I can also Google that the sky is green, but that doesn't mean it's true.
All right.
why don't we?
give us some time to look at it, Amy. Just, I think it makes sense to give it one final reading.
There's another way to handle this. And if it's not a
Well, you
required
could look up
policy,
the
we
thing,
could just put
the
some
number,
statements
Tyler
about
versus
distance learning in our school
I've
handbook.
got to get up in the morning. I'm going to be resigning from this board if you can't move it along. It's to be out at 9:30 every night. This is ridiculous.
Okay, that's another way to look at it, that we do it to the handbook. I think that makes sense to do. I feel more comfortable that we have an agreed upon policy to do remote learning based on what we're currently, you know, based on the reopen plan and other items that we've worked on so diligently.
Well, but
Yeah,
Or
so I
Kate, we
think
could
that
go ahead,
if
Megan.
we're gonna start looking at this as a possibility for snow days and things like that, I think it needs to be its own separate policy, I would say, carved out. I know that's not, Connecticut hasn't made any sort of guidance on that, but I know it's probably something coming down the road, so it might be worth just taking the time and making it its own policy now and having it carved out. But I agree, Amy should definitely sign off on it before we approve it.
I agree.
All right, that's fair. I think we can, we'll do a fourth reading on that. Make sure we're comfortable with it. And if we're not, I mean, I'm open to, I mean, that's just one opinion, Megan. I agree with you that it could be, especially if you're thinking about other items like snow days, or you don't have power, or you don't have water in your town. I mean, there's multiple events that we're presently feeling.
Wind could be
Wind.
your problem, correct?
Yeah. So
Take
I
power
think, yeah.
lines-
Yeah.
Power line
Kate?
down.
Kate,
Yes, but yeah.
it might be something the reopening committee should also take a look at along with Amy, just to make sure that with the variety of points of view that people bring to that committee to review that policy, it might be helpful. I know the main person would be Amy because, you know, she needs to make the building work, but just a thought.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lloyd. It's, again, it's almost like a subcommittee to review it. So I think that's fair that we put as many eyes on it as possible, without, I don't know, just writing in blood what a distance learning plan is either. Like, I want to,
Right.
we don't know when the force majeure happens or whatnot, it's just, it's tough. Okay. Well, those are some marching orders for that one. Number 10 is bylaw 9321 spot 2, remote electronic Board of Education meetings. That was a short one, but it's a bylaw.
Sadly, we've gotten pretty good at that. It's just-
Yeah. Bylaws, do we have any say in this, Adam? I don't think we do. What's it to consider?
My only question was with the 24-hour stuff, if there's any wiggle room to open that up a little bit further. With people working and busy schedules, is 24 hours notice adequate to provide people things? And
That's the legal requirement for notification of board meetings. We've generally been able to notify people far in advance of that. But again, sometimes there's meetings that are needed and you have to give 24 hours. And sometimes you'd like to have a meeting. I've been in situations where you like to have a board meeting and within the next 2 hours and you can't do it. So that's the minimum amount of time that you can have. But
yeah, no, I was thinking
we've been
it should be
posting our
longer.
agendas.
I was thinking it should be longer notice. I mean, this I think is talking more about the public, but just from a board perspective, I think 24 hours is just not a lot of time.
And we could make it, what would you suggest if it's a bylaw and we have to do at least 24 hours? I mean, we could make it anything farther than that, 48 hours, 2 weeks, which would be unrealistic.
I
We
would find that burdensome if we had an issue that we had to meet very quickly. And if we have to have an executive session or other things, I haven't had a problem with this in 42 years as an administrator and attending almost every board meeting in the towns that I've been in. This is just standard operating procedures. And if the board wants to meet, have a longer meeting time, we've been posting our agendas much later, with more time for everybody. And I think that we've done a good job with that. I don't see that changing at this point, but I don't find the 24 hours to be a burden. And if anything, we try to make sure that we're communicating and letting the public know. We posted for this meeting, I believe, a few days ago. So, we generally we even sometimes get out the agenda a week in advance.
I'm fine with it right now.
I'm fine with it. It's what we've done for 30 years.
Hey,
In
Megan,
practice, only 8 months, but
Megan, what do you think it should be? I mean, you brought up the question, what do you think it should be?
I don't
And-
know, it's more a question. Honestly,
30 years.
That these
you know,
before-
honestly, I have more of a concern of not getting materials to the board members timely for some of these off-cycle meetings. Not so much the monthly meetings that we know to prepare for and that we are prepared for at the previous meeting, but some of these kind of emergency meetings, I don't necessarily feel like I'm getting documents with enough time to fully review them. That said, I don't know if this specific bylaw, I think this specific bylaw is talking more from providing the public with that information, not necessarily providing the board members with that information. So maybe this is a different topic for another time.
Adam, is it for the public or is it for the board members?
Well, this is.
by members of the public.
The thing is that we've had some time limits on things, and this is a year where we've had to have some special meetings due to COVID-19, and we're preparing things, even to, 2 days or even the day before getting ready for a board meeting. And, we're trying to fill a board vacancy, and we have a very, very short time limit to be able to do that. So there's times when we know that things are coming and we're working as quickly as we can, but we've been trying to get out board packets a week in advance. And the board received 147 pages of information for this meeting alone. And sometimes I've even had other information delivered because it's come in and it's pertinent. So, I think if it's an issue where board members don't feel that they can get information, they should call me or email me as quickly as possible, and we can see where we are with the status. But we were working right up until the last minute with some of the things that we had for some special meetings, but we had posted the agenda and it was just putting in backup information. We can schedule for longer meetings if people, and there's some boards that just list the topic and they don't send out packets in advance and give the information at the meeting. But if we need to, and I've been in districts where the Board of Education meets every 2 weeks so that they can review information and have the time that they needed. So I think this is a discussion for perhaps another time where we can talk about procedures for the board meetings, because if people need things days and days in advance, then we'll have to change some operating procedures.
Is this a discussion to have an executive session?
It could
Yeah,
be.
I'm fine. I'm fine with, like I said, given that this is more of the public, if the board feels that 24 hours for the public is fine, I'm fine with that as well. And we can talk about the other stuff at another time.
Yeah, I think that's agreeable. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
fair.
Yep. Okay, moving on.
I'm muted. Oh my goodness. I can't stand the mute button. Sorry, guys. Do we have a motion to pass bylaw 9321, spot 2, remote electronic board meetings? As presented. Motion by Arica, second. By Scott. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, teacher evaluation and professional development and the mutual flexibility agreement. That's quite
The state sent us a form, and the teacher evaluation committee met last week, and we can continue with the full teacher evaluation process, which is extremely lengthy. And during this time of COVID, the state is allowing for flexibility. The teacher evaluation committee met. They agreed upon a streamlined approach. They will complete teacher evaluation, and the board would accept. There's a motion that the Board of Education accepts, the teacher evaluation flexibility agreement, which is just a number of things that streamline the information. Amy, in a nutshell, maybe you could just state some of the things, because teachers do get observed and they do have an extensive evaluation, which is probably more extensive than most states in the nation with the flexible arrangement that are made. Amy, do you want to give a brief summary?
Yes, so some of the flexibilities are reducing or changing the format of informal and formal observation, and being able to lighten the load of the formal observations take a long time to do. And so the state is allowing more informal observations to be done in different ways, knowing that not all kids and teachers are in the building at the same time. We're in a little bit different situation. And then also the flexibility of how we're creating goals and what those goals will look like. There's flexibility for all staff through this to be able to identify social emotional learning needs and family engagement, student engagement as part of their learning goals, because that is a huge piece of what we're doing this year. So just adopting those different measures in order to be able to then just move forward with this current year and doing it that way. And hopefully next year we'll be back to our normal, if we can ever, routine.
So the motion would be to the board accepts the teacher evaluation and professional development mutually flexibility agreement.
So moved.
Second, Arca seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 2, resignation from the Board of Education, Kristen Trahan. So sad. Sadly.
Yeah, with regrets too. She was a strong board member. I'm going to miss her greatly. She brought up a lot of good points. I enjoyed her very much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, she was good. She was really good.
Mm-hmm. And she did make great comments about all of the work that we do as a board. And I know it was with great, obviously, regret on her part to just balance this all and the hardship that it is. Amy probably attest to the fact that it would be very hard to do dual roles right now. And I can completely understand, but
Totally understand.
I think it's even telling that all of us with varied opinions on all sorts of issues all agree on what an asset Kristen was to work with on this board.
Mm-hmm.
She was great.
Do we need a motion, Adam, to accept her resignation?
Yes, to accept the resignation.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Start. And Megan, you second?
If I have to. I mean, we could just say no and then she has to come back, right?
I guess that would work that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll second, unfortunately.
Okay, with regret, yes, okay. All in favor to accept her personal decision to step down from the board?
Can we just all abstain?
I know.
With regrets, if you could please, Dee Dee, put in the minutes of how much you
know.
regret having to do this.
Yeah, but I agree. It's just, you make a personal choice too, right? And I wish her all the best in her future. She's always welcome back to participate and to volunteer in our town. Thank you. Okay, all in favor, aye, motion, anybody opposed? I know we all sort of do, but, yeah. Motion carries as presented. Okay, item number 3 is filling the board vacancy.
And that would be an executive session.
Okay, so we'll take that discussion to executive session. Do we need a motion to move to executive session? Our meeting is Thursday, November 12th. Calendars, we aren't, unless we need to, for some special reason, have a special meeting in October, which we'll let you know, hopefully, if that ever comes up, but right now, there's no plan for that special meeting, so, the 12th is the next meeting. Do we have a motion to move into executive session?
I motion.
Scott,
Second.
Second.
Megan, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for anyone not here. Lloyd,
Have a good night.
Aye,
Amy,
Amy.
thank you for all you're doing. We appreciate it.